Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and with Blizzard releasing the quote-unquote account-wide essences with this Tuesday's update, I've been spending, of course, a lot of time on my alts. If you guys watch the streams all the time, you'll usually see me interact with my alts all the time. I try to maintain them as best as possible, get my Mythic Plus keys done, and with this new Essence update, I've been grinding every single ult to get them some of the most acquired essences that really make the lifestyle better for those classes. With so many alts, I've only been able to really put the most amount of time in a few of them. And in this video, I want to tell you guys some of my most favorite alts after going through the journey of getting some of those essences, which ones I've been enjoying the most, in case you guys are looking for an alt or maybe a new main to play, and maybe you have the same taste as I do, and hopefully you'll use this video as a guide. Anyway, let's get into the list of my favorite alts as of currently. In this video, I'll particularly be talking about specs. I could talk about complete classes, but in the end, I really have certain specs that I enjoy, which is why I play my rogue. I enjoy my Outlaw rogue. I don't really care nearly as much for Assassination and Subtlety, even though they're great specs and are fun to explore. I don't care about those specs, even when combined together, nearly as much as I do about Outlaw. I usually like to find a spec that I enjoy, personally just the playstyle, and I stick to it and grind. So in this video, I won't have the rogue since that is my main, but I will talk about other classes that I've been enjoying. First of all, we'll start out with Paladins, primarily Retribution, but a little bit of Protection as well. Primarily, I'm using the new Essence system for both Retribution and Protection Paladin in order to fill out some of the minor key abilities. Gearing both of those specs isn't that difficult. Hell, I have actually decent gear for Protection Paladin with weapons, and I'm looking to get a weapon on red. What I've been enjoying with my Paladin as of recently is all these essences, and minors in particular, are starting to help my spec really come together. For Retribution, I'm seeing a little bit more damage, and it's nice just seeing that raw damage increase from having some of the better slotted essences, especially in the minor slots. But for Protection Paladin, I've been enjoying that tremendously on the more damage slash healing oriented Prot Paladin. I know within raid content, you're really there to take and soak a lot of damage. That's not where I'm having a lot of fun with Prot. I'm having a lot of fun with Prot in Horrific Visions, in dungeons, as well as in islands, just being able to output ridiculous amounts of damage while having that tankiness nature, and all that utility with silences is actually quite fun. Also, the healing that I can provide within certain dungeon situations to my allies, I'm enjoying this hybridness of what a Protection Paladin can do, and I wouldn't be able to achieve these kind of goals without having the tools needed, particularly the minor essences that I've been collecting for my Paladin. Next class on this list is going to be Arms Warrior, but can be substituted with a Frost Death Knight if that is your playstyle. Let's talk about why I'm enjoying Arms. Arms have been massive success of this patch. A lot of people have been picking it up recently, and I feel like I'm finally starting to get a decent setup with my Arms Warrior. It's not fully finalized, but it's really starting to go together. Arms benefits heavily from haste, and I got really lucky on a few traits in order to make a very huge heavy haste build with massive haste procs, making me feel like I'm constantly in Bloodlust when the procs are up. The current iteration of Arms has big damage behind it, massive cleave capability, and even a very fun to play with overlapping strength mechanic. Arms Warrior and Frost Death Knight in particular both have a way for you to build up a crazy amount of strength, and if you have all the procs lined up for you, you can overlap multiple strength buffs on top of each other and just do absurd amounts of damage. For Arms Warrior, you cast Warbreaker, and the more rage you spend while Warbreaker is up, or Colossus Smash if you don't talent into it, it'll give you a set amount of rage for a limited amount of time. The more abilities that cost rage that you spend, the faster you get your Warbreaker back. So essentially, with a buttload of haste, you're able to Warbreaker, spend a bunch of rage, build up a massive strength buff, and then continue spending rage. With enough haste, you're able to just get through raw amounts of abilities, where you can Warbreaker while you're maintaining your strength buff from before, and that's where you're doing absolutely absurd damage. And then imagine all that happening during an execute phase, where Arms Warrior is just tearing your boss from limb to limb. Now, if Warrior is not your cup of tea, maybe there's something about it you don't like, the Frost Death Knight has a very similar mechanic that it does a lot more consistently. It really lives on the idea of overlapping strength buffs, and it kind of benefits majority of his damage from constantly overlapping strength buff over and over. and using key abilities of the massive damage amplifiers during those overlaps in order to dish out quite a bit of damage. So if you're someone who doesn't really care for mobility that Arms Warrior brings and want to be maybe more tankier, you like anti-magic shell, maybe you prefer a range interrupt, and really mobility is not an issue for you, Frost DK is a decent alternative as well to that similar playstyle, and it plays well with Blood of the Enemy. Another spec on this list, I'll have to put in Demonology Warlock. Summoning massive amounts of pets is super enjoyable, but summoning a massive powerful tyrant is still something that I just cannot drop. I've had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Warlocks. Sometimes I am all about Destro, then I'm all about Affliction, then I'm all about Demonology, and I do hope that this class of Warlock gets a little bit of an update to be more role defined of what it's gonna be, because right now we have all these traits and essences that allow us different builds. So maybe that's why I'm flip-flopping back and forth, but Blizzard will have to figure out how would they want for players to play all these specs. How should Demonology be played after we lose all this customization? I think there's a lot of potential with Demonology in particular. Right now, I'm still using the massive tyrant, make a powerful demon that will just obliterate your enemy with equivalent to Chaos Bolt's worth of attacks. Going into Shadowlands, maybe they'll tone down the whole, hey, empower a massive demon, and rather, hey, summon a billion of pets and use that tyrant to extend the life of those pets in order to have yourself a massive demon army. And that could be really cool and fun to play with in the future. But for now, Demonology is kind of up my alley right now. It's all about that massive tyrant as he does the damage for you. All you have to do is meticulously set him up, and I have a lot of fun doing that. And I would say the spec is easy to get into because there's a lot of essences for you to choose from. You can go for Vision of Perfection, the Island Essence, even the Rock Boy in order to have an extra pet alongside of your tyrant, buffing him with a haze buff. So there's a lot of variety of how you can play Demonology in this current setup. So there's so many essences to choose from, so that's going to be a couple different playstyles for me to experiment with. The next spec on this list is going to be Shaman, Enhancement Shaman all day, every day. Enhancement Shaman, I would even compare it to equivalents of, if any of you played Diablo 3, any of the characters. It's a lot about building the gear, building the armor, getting the right traits, the right trinkets, and the right essences. And then you just press mostly one button in order to decimate everything around you. And that's how I would describe Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shaman is very much, and no pun intended, enhanced by all of these extra essences. Some of the essences are super grindy to get, and with the current playstyle, they're very particular on which essences they need in order to make their build work. And finally, with this update on this Tuesday reset, I was able to finalize my Enhancement Shaman and play the proper meta playstyle, and it feels so insanely good. There are some drawbacks, like the playstyle itself has a bit of a ramp up. You have to manage one buff, second buff, build enough resources for a third buff, get Goosewolves out, that's a global, get Ascendants out, that's a global. So there's like a good 6 to 8 seconds of just getting your abilities up and running, better Bloodlust in the opener just so you can cut down all of that time. But once you have everything started, the thing is like a massive lawnmower. You gotta get it rampant, but as soon as you do, it's just gonna keep trucking and cutting down everything in its way. I think Enhancement Shaman right now in the current playstyle is insanely fun to play. It's actually also very effective. I've heard it's even been seen in the Mythic Plus Invitational tournaments. And Enhancement Shaman is mostly about getting the right gear and building the character. The rotation itself is not super complicated, but a lot of the work really comes down to making sure that the character has best in slot everything. And with the current setup with essences, right now would be the best time to try out Enhancement Shaman in PvE, since now you have an easy route to get all the essences you need in order to finally make this wonderful, beautiful spec truly work. Last on this list is gonna have to be Windwalker. I keep praising Windwalkers, but so far I found this to be my easiest to gear spec in all of Battle for Azeroth. And when it's super easy to gear, that means just about any piece of gear is good for Windwalker. That means I can spend more time playing the spec than having to rerun the content just to get the gear before I can truly experience how the spec finally plays. And now with Windwalkers and essences, There's a couple options of different builds that I can play that are all good in their own way, and now I can finally start exploring those builds. So now I'm even doing more damage, and already I was satisfied with the numbers I was putting out now. The spec has been very enjoyable to play, primarily in AoE situations, and you guys know just how many Mythic Plus dungeons I run on the daily every time we livestream. I try to make sure all of my alts have their keys finished. And even though some of the alts are not even on this list, I do make sure to get every one of my alts a Mythic Plus key before the week's reset, just because I have fun maintaining all of my characters. But from doing so, I also did figure out which playstyles I like, and Windwalker so far has been the newest spec that I picked up in this patch, but it's still very enjoyable and I cannot get tired of it whatsoever. I know that Windwalkers might not be given, the biggest setup of, oh, this is the greatest class in the world, unless you PvP. In PvP, Windwalkers have a really good rep. It's very sad to see that Windwalkers are not insane for PvE, like Mythic Plus dungeons. There's been plenty of keys that I've get declined from because, oh, why would I want a Windwalker? I can, of course, bring a Demon Hunter or a Rogue. Even though Windwalker puts out competitive numbers, if you know how to play it right and you know how to play around mechanics, you don't have the cheat death or immunity that Demon Hunters bring, but you can still play around stuff. So this definitely would be one of the specs I would recommend for a lot of you guys to try. If you do have a monk that's been sitting in the backline and everybody told you it's terrible, I would try gearing it. I personally have had a really easy time gearing out this character, and I feel like the damage just keep going up, and I was doing fairly well in terms of like how characters sim on DPS against my other alts. This character was actually ahead compared to alts that I've been working on for patches and patches and patches of this expansion. But like with an Arms Warrior, I do want to give you guys, for this spec, an alternative. Maybe Windwalker is just not your playstyle. I think a Feral is a more enjoyable spec as well for some of you. It's very similar to Windwalker with its focus on massive AoE rip and tear damage, a bit more towards the bleed side of the game, but very similar playstyle in terms of mobility and the self-heal, and I guess in some cases utility, but also very enjoyable within PvE content. Now, just because you didn't see a spec on this list for the video doesn't mean that I hate it. It usually means that I'm just trying to get some of the better gear for it, or trying to find a playstyle that works for me, because maybe the current playstyle I'm not having too much fun with. But that will come with me getting better essences, better pieces of gear, maybe even getting some best in slot pieces, or a corruption that changes my whole playstyle altogether. Kind of like how stars changed my life for Outlaw, going for a very high haze build compared to the original sword and board, pistol shots, and ace up your sleeve between the eyes playstyle that I've used to for such a long time. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. Which specs would you put in on this list for you that you've been enjoying as of alts with this new update? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.